Hello everyone, welcome back. Sorry I got my stream going very late today. Okay. So tonight my plan is to do a little more work on the material design in XAML library. There's been a lot of bugs that have come in, or I should say a lot. There was another bug that came in around the flipper control, and I started looking at how many have been logged that are still just sitting open, and there's quite a few. So a few streams back, we started looking at a potential way of fixing that, and I kind of wanted to continue from that point and see if I could wrap that up and get that squared away, because I think that will go a long way to killing lots of bugs with one stone, and then look at seeing what it's going to take to kick out a release, because I think that was the last one that was open that needed to be taken care of. So let's kind of start there. As always, happy to dive into questions because I rabbit trail a lot, and I'm cool with rabbit trails. They're fun. So before we do, though, there was one thing I wanted to cover. So last week, there we go. That stream. Last week we had looked at the eye configuration setup and what it would take to plug that into Color Kraken, and I got a little rabbit trailed, and we never actually got the thing fully implemented and working the way we wanted. Specifically around the idea of having a key vault that we don't have access to, and having it not just blow up, having it be a provider that could provide configuration, but if somebody doesn't have access for whatever reason, it doesn't blow up on us. So I went through and finished that out, and so I wanted to at least walk through what's there. All of this code is checked in. Let me boom, code on GitHub. If anybody's interested, there's the repo link, Color Kraken. There is also in progress, you will note, Color Kraken for Mac. A colleague of mine is actively working on it, so go Bruce, you're awesome. Anyway, this ignore exception from last source. So this is something I wrote, so I figured I'd at least show it here. So all it does is look at these registered sources, and specifically this _1 is new arrange syntax that will grab the one back from the end. So it grabs the last configuration source, removes it from the list, and then wraps it in this tolerance source that I made. And if we go and look at this guy is just an eye configuration source. The eye configuration source is a very thin interface, and it just has this build method, which gotta learn to pin my tabs. Boom. Let's see, tolerant source, pin tab. So my build interface just returns back this tolerant provider, which is a private class down here. This guy takes in the internal provider, which was the one that we removed before. And then the eye configuration provider has a little bit more stuff, but more importantly, this guy literally just try catches everything and throws everything away. Exceptions don't matter. This is intolerant probably is the wrong word. Ignores, trash cans, throws away everything. The only kind of mildly interesting one is this change token one down here. You do need to return a non-null instance for this. Whoop. Don't zoom out the code. That's bad. Back to 100. Which is just this empty change token guy here. So I didn't do anything fancy. It literally does nothing. So that's it there. So in terms of just finishing out where it went, I went and wrote it. Took me a little bit to get it implemented, but it is out on the repo if anybody wants to see it. That way you can have an example there. Okay, material design. Something about material design. That's where we were going. So, but again, if anybody's interested in just seeing the finished product of the eye configuration from last week, it's out there. It's done. Huzzah. Okay, so I'll close that. Oh, actually, maybe we'll finish this out. Yeah, we should probably finish this out. I was working on something, and yeah, let's just explain what's going on. So there were back to GitHub. There were a handful of pull requests that came in, and it started being interesting to me because, for example, this pull request here just modifies the contributing.markdown. Okay, this should not cause a build error of any kind. There's no reason changing the markdown, but yet the build started failing. Specifically, a bunch of unit tests started failing. And if we go in here and look, we scroll all the way down, you can kind of start to get a little bit of a hint from some of the exception messages. I only know English, just to be clear. So a lot of these tests were very helpfully written by other people who know more than me. And more specifically, we can quickly kind of just start to divine from the just the name of the test and the failures that this is localization related. The time and date pickers have been notorious in this library for having localization problems. So people not familiar with the term localization basically just means getting the language to display in your language of choice. For WPF, that's largely accomplished by WPF just following whatever you set up in Windows. So if you change the language in Windows to be French, you get French, assuming the person who wrote the app has set it up with a French language. It's usually pretty tolerant about falling back, especially the built-in controls. They do a pretty good job of it, but because we've templated the built-in controls, there's plenty of opportunity for things to go wrong. So I started looking at these tests, and upon further investigation, I learned a couple things. So specifically, if we go and look at this test here. So for example, this is one of the ones that was failing. Ignore the green circle, it's a lie. But you'll note it's just taking in a time picker control. It's setting the language and doing some toggling of different potential flags that will change the way that the time picker displays. So what's the time format, which is just basically long or short? Is it 24-hour? Does it contain seconds? What's the current selected time? And then making sure that the text box shows appropriate. Pretty simple. But if we look at the data for this, there's a lot of data in here. And specifically, there's a few key languages. So we test invariant, we test US English, we test Spain Spanish, Iran Farsi, and that was me testing. And each of these languages, so you can see that it's passing in a whole bunch of parameters, but each of these yield back 8 test cases. So that one test gets run 8 times, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times 8. So 64, this is actually 64 tests in one. So the technical term for this would be data-driven test. If you hear anybody talk about that, or sometimes people use the term parameterized test. Sorry, I have a warm beverage. Must consume it while it is still warm. But this one started failing. And when I started digging into it, one of the things that I noticed is the target frameworks that this was targeting, the failure was only occurring in .NET 5 and later, which gave me a little bit of pause. But more importantly, the other thing that I had noticed is the date on these pull requests. So if we go back up here, we come back in here, and actually we can probably just look at this. So this is the pull request verification action. So if we go in here, if we go pull request verification, you'll note there was a very specific point. So when you see things like this where it's branch failed, branch pass, it's like, oh, there was a failure, then Michael went and fixed it and it started working. But it comes in, you'll note, sometime between 14 days ago and 3 days ago, things just consistently start failing. Even the icon update one, which is an auto-generated PR from the icon update action, that one shouldn't ever fail either. And it starts failing too, with similar unit tests. And I recalled that there was, on our GitHub Actions, so anybody interested in this, oh, here, quick, shameless self-promotion. Actually, YouTube, boom, go to me. If we go here, GitHub Actions. This one. Copy link. This video here, if anybody's interested in the actions that I set up for this project, that's the stream of me doing them there. But on the actions themselves, so if we go in here, build and test, action, there is, nope, PR verification. We want up here. This guy right here. You know, that says Windows latest. And if we look on one of these failures, you'll note that GitHub has started showing a warning saying, hey, just a heads up, Windows latest now uses Windows 2022. And we can click on here to get a little more information. But the short version is it used to be Windows 2019. And I recall seeing a notification come out from GitHub that this was happening a while ago, but apparently the combination of .NET 5 and the Windows update seems to have caused, or I should say, it appears that Microsoft fixed some localization issues, and that's what caused the breakage. And why do I think they fixed it? If we come over here and look, so let me make this bigger. Conveniently, some of the languages they broke, I may not know multiple languages, but I know people who do. Not that one, not that one. Where's the other one? Okay, hang on, I gotta make this smaller. I can't get this window to collapse the way I want. Okay, where is my path? Let's just flatten it. Not that one, not that one, not that one, that one. So, specifically, conveniently, one of the languages that started failing was Japanese. And I have a colleague who knows Japanese, which is very convenient. So this down here is the old data. And you'll note, these are testing something very similar. It's grabbing the calendar info for displaying dates. And this is something that's always localized. And so in American English, we go with full month display and then 4-digit year. And then you'll note, I think this is French Canadian, if I remember which one that is. And you'll note here there was a slight change with the comma drop. But here on this one for Japanese, as I learned, these are the symbols for, let's see if I can remember this right, month, year, day name or something like that. I can't quite remember. But they used to have these little single quotes around them, which just looks a little funny. The way it was, my colleague described it to me is, he's like, it looks about as funny as if you were to put single quotes around like January. I was like, oh, yeah, that's kind of dumb. So these go away, but they only go away in .NET 5 or greater. So something that got introduced a couple versions ago, I don't recall exactly which, a couple. Microsoft added in a bunch of built-in compile time constants that you can leverage in your code. So based on whatever target framework moniker, TFM, that just literally means target framework from your CS project. Based on that, these will either be defined as true or false, and then you can write your code in such a way as to be able to handle updates as they come through, which can be quite handy, especially in a library like this where we're trying to handle multiple frameworks, because I'm not interested in breaking people's backwards compatibility. As long as Microsoft supports a framework, I intend to support it in the material design library. But on that note, something to be aware of, .NET 5 is set to end of life in May of this year. So what is that, 3 months, give or take a little bit? So be aware, at some point in the very near future, I'm killing .NET 5 support, because I'm not going to support a framework that Microsoft doesn't support. And more importantly, the update from .NET 5 to .NET 6 is usually as simple in your project as changing that 5 to a 6. It's usually that simple. I've updated several projects from .NET 5 to .NET 6, and it's usually about as hard as switching a 5 to a 6. There's occasionally a few minor things here and there. They're kind of rare. So let's finish this out. So because I'd like to get these other PRs in that other people have very nicely contributed. But I need my pull request to pass. And one other thing I will note, and how I also tracked it down. I did run a build where I set it back to the older build agent and it passes. So that's exciting. So I can say for certainty, my tests pass when run under Windows 2019 and fail run under Windows 2022. But looking at the changes that went into .NET, it looks like it's probably a combination of .NET 5 and later Windows. Built-in instructions or your personal customization? Good question. So let me jump to that code actually, because we're about to write more of it. As soon as I remember what file it is. So it's not mine, is the short version. So calendar format info test. Calendar. Here, I'll just do it here. So these pound ifs, there are a bunch of built-in ones. So, and I'm trying to remember exactly which version Microsoft added these in. It was around the .NET Core 3.1-ish days, because that was about the point where people started running into cases where they needed to multi-target. It might have been as late as .NET 5. They're new-ish, but Microsoft went through and defined all of these for you because people were building them out themselves. Because you can do your own compile time constants. So, for example, if we just jump into here, I believe it is as simple as define constants. So, mine. So, in your CS proj, you can do something like this. So the compile time constants are semicolon delimited. So if you want to put in multiple, you can. And then doing something like this at the beginning just says, hey, take what's already defined in there, and we're just going to append semicolon and the thing that we want. So this is all Microsoft has done, is build these in. And then the way you get around doing something different per like target framework, you would do something like condition, let's see, target framework, net 472. So now whenever my target framework is net 472, the mine constant will be defined as true. So a pound if on mine will be true. So they've done something akin to this, probably a little more complicated, but it's more or less this, which is great. Okay, so let's see if we can wrap these up, because I'm trying to get these tests passing under, what was this, net 5 I was playing in? Yeah. Because once I get these passing in net 5, I'm just going to then pound if them for net 5, because I think there's going to be quite a few changes. And I think I'm almost at the end. I was getting close, and I had to stop. So you'll note here, I believe this is the Farsi one, so 57 to 60. So the first 4 of the last set of 8. So if we go in, jump me to the test, look at the incoming data. So here's the last set of 8, and it's the first 4 that it's breaking on. So specifically the 12-hour format. And the change that I had to make up here, and this is where it gets weird, because there's a right to left language inside of the left to right code, which means the selection starts to look really wonky as you go through it. But it looked like the subtle difference was just the addition of what I assume to be the AM/PM separator. That's the only thing I can conclude that this is. So we expected, or at least previously, it worked in that it would specify a 24-hour period. That is no longer true. It now looks like this. How do I get my cursor? See, this is the problem when you're trying to do left and right arrow keys in a left to right language, but I'm pretty sure if I do this, this is going to get me into a passing state. Left and right arrow keys don't work the way they should. Paste. Okay, so I think that'll probably, let's bring this guy back on here. That'll probably get us into a passing state. Something else that I noticed, and it must have been with one of the later Visual Studio updates. I'll show it to you as it runs here. Watch this test. because you'll note it's in a failing state, and it may be a bad example here in a moment, but it immediately goes green as soon as one of these tests reports green. Yeah, but then it flips back to red as more of them run. And it used to show running until all of them completed, and now it immediately flips. And I can't decide if I love it or not. Oh, and I didn't change the time, so XUnit is cleverly pointing out to me that I was an idiot, and I only changed half the problem. Okay. Now I'll bring you back over here. Run. Okay, perfect. So I fully expect that what I have done at this point is fix .NET 5 and break older frameworks. I expect 5 and 6 to pass and older ones to then start failing. But that's where we're going to go put the pound ifs in there. What? There, you hit it. Boom. 4 fails. What did I do? Okay. What did I do wrong here? I thought I had already... expected... Oh, not quite. Oh, 430. Got it. I didn't put an O in front of it. And by an O, I clearly mean a 0. See, I didn't catch it a bit. It turns out that the transition to .NET 5 broke something in localization. Well... yes and no. So I'm going to caveat this with I'm not 100% confident exactly what broke it. I know the conditions under which it is broken. So I believe some combination between Net 5, Net 6, and later versions of Windows caused the problem. Specifically, it appears that Microsoft fixed and not necessarily broke, but they fixed localization for some languages. And there are, if we go and look, and this is why it gets a little hard. Let's see, .NET breaking changes, because they do document all of them. I think it's this page here. Yeah, so this is a list of breaking changes from .NET, which is, it's nice that they document them. And specifically, if we go down to globalization, I think this is the change here that I think this change that they're documenting here is the one that's actually triggering my unit test failures. So specifically, they call out if you're in .NET 5 or later running Windows 10, the May 2019 update or later, and I assume because for the build agents out on Windows, it would have been the switch between Windows Server 2019 and 2022, and it would not surprise me to find out that whatever update they did inside of Windows for this ICU and NLS API change, that it existed in 2019 and changed in 2022, because that was the change that got my attention, is when the build agent started failing. So I think this change probably is what triggered it. Microsoft fixed some of the localization so that different languages display correctly. The problem is I had tests written on how a language displays around dates and times for some of those languages. And my tests were written targeting behavior that existed previously, which is fine. They should update languages when there's mistakes in them. That I can totally get on board with. But it just means that now my tests are failing. Expected 04. Oh, interesting. So 57 and 58 are not expected to have it. So 4, 6. So the first two. Interesting. I'm learning so much about Farsi today. So the 12-hour short format does not have the leading 0, but the 12-hour long format does. Okay. I don't know Farsi, so I'm going to trust that Microsoft knows it better than me. There. Okay, so let's just confirm real quick that .NET 5 tests pass. I expect .NET 5 tests to pass, .NET 6 tests to pass, because the behavior, and I believe the change was in 5. The combination of being on .NET 5 and a newer Windows operating system, I believe, is the combination where the behavior change occurs. Okay, so let's confirm that .NET 6 passes now too. And then I fully expect, why do I show, expand this out a little bit. And then I fully expect that I've broken tests for 4.7.2 and 3.1. I'm fairly confident those tests will fail. Okay, let's just confirm that. And the solution will be, I'm going to put in those same pound ifs that I did for the other tests inside of this source data. But I want to confirm that what I think the behavior is, because it is possible if the change was Windows APIs that the older frameworks might have updated as well. Not because the frameworks themselves updated, but the APIs in Windows that they invoked changed. Okay, so 2 failed, which is a different number than I expected. Okay, we'll come back to look at those here in a minute. Oh, 2 tests, but within those, how many failures were there? 16 failures, 16 failures. Okay, so these are the same set of failures. Okay, yeah. So only 2 tests, but 16 cases between those. Okay, so that's expected, and I fully expect .NET 4.7.2 to give me the exact same behavior. And that would make me very happy if it does, because then we can put this to bed and go back to the fun stuff. Because as exciting as it is to deal with other languages, languages are not my forte. But it is something, it's one of those areas, localization is one of those things that bites people all the time, especially in production code. I'm always watching out for things that could be a problem. This one here was one of my favorites. So down on that same link above about the Windows compatibility, the string index of. So it's worth noting a lot of the string methods in C# are culture specific, and people don't often take that into consideration. And this was my favorite. It's something very simple of look for new line character, and how that change and how the behavior is different. And I just thought that this was amazing. So depending on what you're targeting, index of new line character in the string hello carriage return new line world will return either -1 or 6. I thought that was awesome. Now it's worth noting that the code analysis that they call out is very helpful in that it usually flags a lot of the cases where you're using a string method where you really should be specifying a culture. You really should be. And oftentimes culture info and variant culture is what you want, but if it's something that could be displayed to an end user, you want to take that into account and use the culture that is typically coming in from the UI, which is usually your thread culture, depending on your framework. Okay, so this should be the same case, 16 and 16. Perfect. Okay, get cracking, time to do your thing. So time picker unit tests, that's the guy. Boom. Okay, so these are the guys we want to clean up and change. So these are all the changes that I had to make in order to get .NET 6 to pass. So for whatever reason, and here's the best part, this little thing between the A and the M, yeah, that's not a space character. I tried to type it, test still failed, and I went, wait, what? I had to open it in a hex editor to see what it was. So that was fun. Oh, this is fun. Get cracking is falling apart on the left to right characters. Oh, I'm screenshotting this. This is awesome. Okay, so we're just gonna hold on to that. That's gonna make a nice bug report here in a little bit. We'll go report that to them. Let's see. Ban canvas, cropped image. Yeah, sure. I'll take the update when I exit. We're just going to save that off to the side, and we'll come back to that later. So GetKraken's lost its mind. So we will not use it as an editor here. That's kind of fun. Wow. That's a pretty epic bug. And this is one of those areas, my colleague who knows Japanese oftentimes sets his computer language to Japanese, and will find all kinds of bugs like this with applications that haven't taken other languages into account. It's very difficult to do well. I will say this, very difficult. I used to work on some software. It was specifically around Bible software. And so there's quite a bit of material that would be either in Hebrew or Greek. And so you start to run into some very interesting use cases, especially when you have, say, right to left languages embedded inside of left to right languages in the same line or the same sentence. Doing that layout gets interesting. It's not an easy thing to do well. Okay, so let's start doing some pound ifs. Okay, so we're going to come up here. I'm just going to leave GetKraken on the side. I realize people can't see it. They're just going to trust me for a moment. Okay, so 144 is where we're going to start, is where these set of changes are built under different frameworks, one-on-one computer. Yes, so that's actually a good point. So for my tests and for the library itself, I actually have multiple frameworks set up. So typically when you do file new project in Visual Studio, it always prompts you and says, hey, what framework do you want? And it will set target framework, not frameworks, framework singular, and it'll put in whatever framework you picked, which is fine. But if you want to build a library that can be consumed on many different frameworks, like what we're building here, you have to put an S from framework to frameworks and then just semicolon delimit. And so yeah, you can actually compile against a bunch of different things. And it's also worth noting you can compile against different CPU architectures as well. The Tablet stream that I did 4 weeks ago now, I end up compiling it for ARM on my machine. And you can also end up compiling things like Android stuff. And you can actually even compile iOS on Windows. Now, I'm going to put a big star next to it, because even though you can do that, what you can't do without a Mac is actually sign the app, which is why like Maui and Xamarin need a Mac host to actually do the compilation. Is they need, because of licensing restrictions, in order to get that kind of final step of the build process done, you have to go through Apple tools. They have to run on a Mac. Licensing, lawyers, whatever. I think I heard at one point, it's not a technical problem, it's a licensing problem. It's like, well, I can't fix that. I'm sorry. But you can actually compile and target a whole bunch of different frameworks. Whether you can run it at that point is another story. But you can target them. Which is how, like, when I'm compiling for to run on my Raspberry Pi, I compile against ARM locally, and then the binaries just get shipped across. Which is kind of cool. Because if I tried to run ARM locally, my machine's gonna... It goes, yeah, no, and gives a fun error. Okay, so 144. I'm trying to decide where we pound if it, and I think we're going to do the whole for each, because there is a question of where does it make the most sense to do this. Pound if net, let's see, 50 or greater. And we're going to come down here, and no, it's actually all of these. But I think I'm going to do it one language at a time. Even though I could do them all in one shot, I think it makes more sense to keep each language. Because if I'm going to run into a problem with, say, Spanish, I want to have all my Spanishy tests here. The other thing to note, so you'll see how this stuff is grayed out. Because this drop down here in the top left-hand corner is set to 472. So if you hit this drop down, you can say, okay, show me the code for the .NET 5 compilation. So you end up seeing this the moment you set that target frameworks, is you'll get an item in this drop down for each of your target framework. Excuse me. And you can compare and see what does that mean for my code in this situation. Let's see here. Okay, so that is... I actually want to grab this bit of code here. So I want to grab what the code was. And I can get my selection to work properly. And that's actually what I want on this side. Boom. And the only thing that's a little obnoxious is the code formatters will only format for the framework that you're in. So you can do something weird like this. And I can format my document and it won't do anything. And then I can go over here. Now when I format my document, oh, it still doesn't do anything. Apparently, oh, there it goes. Formats wrongly, but it formats. Okay, there's that. Yeah, so the subtle difference there for Spanish. And then we'll do Farsi down here. So pound if net 50 or greater. We'll come down here, go else. And we'll go end if. And then I need to grab my old Farsi data. Paste that in there. Look down here to make sure that looks right. Does. Okay, so now if I grab my Test Explorer, boom, I should be able to say run all the tests in the project. So we're going to just grab all of them. And those should all just pass. It's actually quite nice to see these run because you can see the performance gains of .NET over the years. So because these are all the more or less the exact same tests. There's obviously a few minor differences because I've just now put in those pound ifs, which means they're going to have slightly different code that's been compiled into each of them. But functionally, they're very similar tests. And this is not a performance benchmark, but you can kind of just get an idea of execution time. So you can see net 472 just took 19.1 seconds. Okay, great. And then I wish it would do net 3, but unfortunately numbers come before the letters. So net 5 is going to go. So you can see .NET 5 ran in 12.9 seconds. And you'll note these numbers count a little weird. And it's only because it's running multiple tests in parallel. And so it's calculating as things return. So you can kind of see a little bit back and forth. Yeah, because you saw that went to 14, then down, then up, and it's kind of all over the place. So, and again, these numbers are going to be highly dependent based upon what I'm doing, and I'm streaming right now, which obviously skews things. But old .NET Framework, 19 seconds. Just going to .NET Core 3.1, drops 5 seconds off of there. You go to Net 5, you shave a few more seconds off there, or I guess a little over a second, 1.2. You go down to Net 6, you get a little bit faster still. And these numbers fluctuate, but in general, you can see that usually just updating your app to newer frameworks, you're going to go faster by doing nothing else. It's awesome. And then you say, thank you, Microsoft. Or at least that's how I do it. Okay, so all these tests pass. Let's ship it. Okay, so get cracking. Let's see. Create branch. Fix localization tests. Yeah, a few changes. Stage all. Show me tree mode real quick. I gotta back this guy up. I need a little more screen space to work with. Okay, so let me just check. So the one thing I did throw on here is I did start compiling these things specifically for particular frameworks, and I think I actually want to change that a little bit. Because I do not want to add explicit Net 5 support to to a library that I'm about to yank net5 support out of. So that was largely just there for the purposes of I wanted to test against that particular framework. Let's see, I think I did the same thing in the tests. I did. Let's go here. Because I don't want to have... net5 support wasn't in there before. Not saying you can't use it on net5. Because you can certainly be on net5 and target the older framework. That's fine. Let's see here. So what do we got here? And so the main library didn't have explicit net5 on there. We are going to add net6 though. We're going to drop net5 altogether and just go straight net6. I just wanted it on there while I was testing those things to make sure it was going to work just fine. So okay, so those tests make sense. Oh, shoot. Wait, this was the test. Okay, that's okay. Yeah, because the main app did not have anything other than net 452 and net 6. And 452, I'm pretty sure, is end of life or very close to it. But I currently don't need to break it, so I won't break it yet. It will get broken in one version before the 5.0 release because I want to add source generators and I have to kill .NET 452. Sorry. Okay. All that looks good. And fixing failing unit tests localization. Okay. So boom. Push. Start a pull request. Let's see, did they fix this? Oh, they did. Thank you, Get Kraken. Before, these things took forever to populate because it was busy hitting the large number of forks. Several tests started failing with the newer Windows latest GitHub action runners. That's not later. Yes. This fixes those tests. Sure. Create pull request. And then we're gonna come back over here. And we will wait for that guy to pass, and then once he passes, that should open up. We're gonna close some of these PRs. Close PR. See, that is a bad branch. I should go whack. Don't need it anymore. Let's see. Rollers 452, 46, and 461 will reach end of support April of this year. Yeah. And I do believe the source generator branch that I have rolling is going to kill it off too. Because in order to do source generators, I believe I had to rev up to at least 472 or similar. I know most people have been updating their apps off of this. And it's one of those, I really question how many people are going to be forced to target an older framework and simultaneously be updating their NuGet packages. Because that would be the failure case of people who are going to have problems. Don't think it'll be that many people. Okay, so let's clean that pull request out of there. Let's see. I want to clear this one out. This is on my fork, so that's fine. So close pull request. That's going to be older build agent. Delete that. Clean that off. Great. I guess I could have done it right there too. Okay, so we'll let that guy chug for a little bit. He'll think about what he's done. And that'll get that guy going. Okay, so back to where we want it to be. So we want to be here. And so this is 2505. So if we recall back to issues. I can't hear what you're saying because I'm at a concert. James, why are you watching the stream then? But I want my hat back. So my buddy James was at my house playing games, and he has a horrible habit of leaving stuff behind. Horrible habit. So I'm holding his hat ransom. 2505. Don't worry, I'll send you pictures. Hey! Thank you, James. I appreciate the sub to Rick Sanchez. Okay, I guess you can have your hat back. Okay, so this one was all around the flipper, and specifically in this use case, the idea was the content of the flipper was wanting to animate, and that was failing because the flipper uses a visual brush to capture its content, which has a whole bunch of problems. The visual brushes are great, but they also have this ugly side effect here. So in case it's not clear, oh, that's even less clear. And I've seen various things come up with this. So in WPF, whenever I see something like text looks bad or text looks blurry, almost exclusively, Windows True Type font. Yeah. So every time somebody says text looks blurry, it is almost always a case of somebody's done something that causes True Type to get turned off. And there's various things in WPF that will cause them to get turned off. The shadow effect is a common example. The visual brush is another example. Effectively, to do good True Type, Windows has to know a little bit about the font and how it's being rendered. And the moment you say, oh, I'm going to put this in a visual brush, you're taking over the rendering of it, which is now problematic. So there are oftentimes when I see people say it looks blurry or similar, it's almost always that case. So my plan is to fix that bug by just killing off that visual brush bit. So let's see. So we have our flipper tests. Just trying to remember exactly where we landed. Okay. So we were swapping out the child of the flipper at the point we were doing the flip. And I think that's okay. And we changed out some of the templates so that we had a placement target to be able to move the content in and out. That was the game plan. And I think there's an easier way to go about this, and I want to look at some options here. Because this whole thing was around when the flip changes, what we're going to do is we're going to go and grab this thing, wait for the animation to finish. And I think we can do a little better than this. Specifically, I think what we can do is kind of a smoke and mirrors trick where so here's my thought. You've got your regular content for the flipper sitting on the first layer, and we put the 3D plane behind it, so it's blocking, and more importantly invisible. So we'll set visibility collapsed, or actually probably hidden is better. When you click to flip, this guy drops. Visual brush gets visual brush gets put here of the content. This guy's visibility disappears. The flip occurs. The new content gets made visible behind the flipper, and then this guy goes invisible, and we're left with it. That's the game plan. That's what I want to see work. So let me go and check, because the UI tests. Let me just see. I can't remember whether we were testing this in here or elsewhere. So let's just debug this test real quick. I think That's not where I want to be. I want you over here. See if I can. I'll have to find the button for that. You went on the wrong side. Oh, and I missed it because it's the loading effect. Try this one more time. This time, my cursor on this window so that the window opens up here. There. So we really should make one of these things do the flip. Okay, I think that's probably why I was testing in the demo app, because that just proves the animation works, doesn't actually prove that the rest of it goes, but that's fine. Oh, that's the reason for why the test wasn't shutting down. Okay, so let's go. I think the flippers are actually under the cards. Yeah, so there's that jumpy bit, which is annoying. Yeah, so we just need to address that and that little adjustment bit. Okay, so let's see what we can do, because I kind of want to look at just gutting this flipper and redoing it. Okay, so inside the material design library, main project, themes folders where all the cool stuff lives, flipper.xaml. Okay, and there are two flipper styles in here worth knowing about. There's the regular flipper, and then there's the card flipper. The only difference between these two is the card flipper, as the name implies, has a card set as its content. But I think if we get what I'm wanting to do going, we can probably kill off... You know what? Let's make a new style. What is the one in the demo app? What is this guy using? So he's using the card flipper style. So let's change. Well, yeah, we're in Git. We can just sack everything. Okay, so we're gonna change this guy up. So we're gonna collapse the visual state groups because I don't care about you at the moment. So what I want is 3 layers or 3 things that I can swap. Let's format some of this guy up. I really got to get that XAML formatting extension installed. Okay, so there is the border is going to be around the outside. That'll be fine. And the only reason this guy is in here is to support shadow depth, I think. Plain content and all of that jazz. Okay. We don't want to deal with any of that. What I would like to have happen is I almost just want this grid. This grid by itself. That grid goes there. The plain 3D is going to go right smack in the middle. We're going to get rid of the rest of this. Get rid of all that. Okay, because if this works, the card style is going to basically be the other one with a card as some default content. I'm thinking is how this plays out. That's the theory. Okay, so we got that. We already got some red squiggles, so I'm sure we're targeting something that I just deleted from somewhere. Yeah, sure, we'll find you in a minute. Okay, so what are you targeting that you're so unhappy about? Back presenter, front presenter, those still exist. Those still exist. Part plain 3D, that's fine. That's what we want. Part plain 3D. The other advantage of not doing it in code behind is we can then use these animations here to do the visual swap of everything. And I think that will end up with a much cleaner look. Because I think the only thing that really needs to happen is when the flip starts, we need to grab whatever content is being shown and bring it up. And it looks like we're already kind of doing that with the visibility. Yeah, so we're already toggling the visibility of the front and back content, which is good. This is already managing almost all of it. So the only thing I think that needs to happen then is the acquisition and placement of that visual brush. So, sorry, looking at what we did last time. So before we did all of this, I don't know if we actually need any of this stuff here. Yeah, we are going to need to set some of this stuff into here. But we can get rid of most of this. Okay, so let's go into the flipper control itself. Okay, and let's see. Before we added what? We added placement, target, and plain content. And I think we've already axed both of those. Yeah, those are gone. You don't matter anymore. So, oh, remote tab. Thank you. The placement target is going away. Plain content is going away. Okay, so that is there. Let's see, and then we're gonna get rid of this stuff here goes away. Don't want to deal with that. Oh, we're not going to use an expression body for that. What are you unhappy about? What is this? Oh, hello. Where did you come from? That's rather convenient. I don't know where this feature came from. This little red triangle showing me when I delete lines. Rather handy. Okay, so we're going to come back to you in a minute. More importantly, come down here. We're just going to whack all three of you. Okay, so inside of our flipper now. So the is flipped property change callback. So this gets invoked either when we're going to flip true or flipped false. And let's see. We don't want to do anything with the state changes. And the whole point of what we were doing here was setting the content into the flipper's plane, because that's what does the visual brush. Plane 3D. Clean that up. I think what I'd like to do though is actually make a copy, not because this guy here grabs the child, creates a visual child, does all of this stuff. And this plane 3D completely exists for the purpose of supporting the flipper control. But we can do a little better. So hang on, we gotta do it all in the document. We're in here, apply. There we go. Okay, so we'll clean that up. That to do is mine, which is fine. So this guy here is currently wanting a child to be set. And I'm wondering if we're gonna do this the way I'm proposing. I don't think we actually want this. I don't really want to delete it quite yet, though. So we're gonna make a new one. How about visual content for now? Okay. And how about we actually go a step further? Not even make it a property. Set framework element, because element. Okay, so because what I really want to do here, so oftentimes when I'm trying to prototype stuff, this is I'll literally just write the API that I want it to be. Okay, so what did this look like before I got my grubby fingers all over it? So all of this stuff is new. We're just gonna get rid of all this. This is all new. So this is what the method looked like before I got my hands on it. So I think what we want to do is I'd really like to just do flipper set visual content. What did I call the thing? Oh, not flipper. I want to do plain 3D set visual content. And then based upon whether we're flipped or not, that's going to determine. So if I'm trying to remember, and actually I guess we don't need to do this. This is actually probably not what we should do. Rather than reading the property, we've already got the new value coming in here. So we know what the new value is. So bool dependency property changed event args, new value. So if it is flipped, we're going from front to back, I believe. So flipper front content. That's not quite what I want though. I want the actual, I don't want the content. I want the rendered thingy from the template. I want this guy, front content presenter. Do we not save him in here? We don't. So content presenter. So when building out custom controls in WPF, this is the way that you link and have your control hint back to the XAML. These are the elements your template must have. So the idea with lookless is the flipper C# file knows how this flipper control needs to behave, and the XAML declares how it should look with the template. Now, I'm setting up a template that's fairly simple, but perhaps somebody wants to add in an extra bit of the template where there's some sort of maybe header or footer. They can do that. You just roll your own template and then add in whatever elements you want. And as long as you have the elements that I've declared here as what my template needs to have, everything just works, which is awesome. Okay, let's see. Let's go with, and actually, so we're trying to ship this content. We're past the point of proof of concept because we know we've got solutions that can work. Rid of that, and we will do that content. And these are nullable, and they need to have a setter because they won't exist until the apply template command. Oh, I can't call that front content. Front content presenter. There, we'll disambiguate. Boom. Okay, so now on our apply template, we need to pull those guys out. So we want front content presenter. Get template child. That one. As content presenter. And this should be back. Here's your problem. Oh, I didn't change the data type here. There. Bum. Also, I don't know if people caught what I did there. When I went to change the data type, this is something that if you're getting started with development, I highly recommend whatever IDE or tool you're using, learn the keyboard shortcuts. They will save you so much time. So in this case, if Karnak wasn't dead, again, I don't know why it crashes. But Alt-Shift down arrow, you'll note now gives me two cursors where I can edit two lines simultaneously. Very, very handy. Visual Studio has multi-cursor support. Visual Studio Code has a lot better. Other IDEs like Writer have even more support. Very much recommend learning. Okay, so we want this to be front content presenter, else flipper back content presenter. Okay. We're gonna just do question mark there. We're gonna go set visual content, and we'll make that nullable so that it stops complaining. And actually, we will do bring this out. Framework element, visual content, something like that. Okay, visual content, goes like that, goes like that, something like that. Okay, clean that up, clean that up. Okay, so now the question is, what do I need this guy to do here? So I'm giving him the element that I want. We don't need any of this garbage. Not going to matter. We're not going to do any of this. We're not going to do this child stuff. Not exactly, at least. Yeah, I don't want to deal with any of this. Go away. And this does this layout and validation stuff. I don't even think I want that. Because the idea is I want to freeze this guy in place. Okay, so plain 3D. What did we change here? So I'm just looking at these changes here. So we added that, and then we added this to be able to null it out. So I think what I want to do is I want to change up the way this works. Because this thing is leveraging logical child for the visual brush. And I think I want to have it not do that and take a passed in value instead. Clean you up a little bit, make you easier to read. Something like that, I think. And then update rotation, that's fine. Tyrion, Okay, so that is all fine. So the key part here is this guy needs to take in a visual. And I'd like to replace usages of logical child. I'm just going to flatten you out. I have a hard time reading all these property setters when they're on one big long line. Okay. Flatten that out a little bit. Let's see. I find this much easier to read. I'd rather more lines for some readability. That makes it a little easier to see what's going on. Boom, 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 boom. Thought I saw it used in one more place. There. I'd like visual to be there. Okay, so this is going to set our visual child. This will be, this guy will take in logical child. And we're going to have this guy create a visual child from element. And we are actually going to drop, I don't think I want to add logical children to this. I think I can get away with just a visual child. There may be a layout problem with measuring, but but I honestly can't remember. So we're going to test it. Okay, so we got to handle the null cases, which is what the squiggly lines are handling. So if we don't have a value, what should we do? Well, let's start with this. If visual child is not null, then we will do remove visual child. Okay, so if we've already got a value, come in here, and then we'll go if element is not null, do this. And then in either case, we're just going to invalidate measure. Okay, I think this works. Not 100% certain. But this seems a lot cleaner to me if it does. Because now we'll eliminate the whole visual brush for displaying a static element, which is the fundamental problem. Nobody's going to be able to tell if their text is blurry for the split second while the plane rotates. Okay, so cards. Okay. So the first thing I'll note is that because we're using the card style, but our template has dropped the card, the little border that we had there is now gone, but that's okay for now. Okay, and we blow up immediately. Must disconnect specified child from current parent visual before attaching to new parent visual. So in this case, the visual coming in is our content presenter. Got it. Okay, so we don't want that. What I would really like to do, though, is clone this guy. So where does this visual brush get put? Diffuse material. Okay, that's fine. Where do you get put? Back model geometry. So I'm just trying to figure out where the heck this thing is going. So model 3D group. I'm less familiar with all of these 3D classes. What do you end up deriving from? You're just an animatable. Okay. Fine, which is a freezable. And you actually need a legit visual. To put inside. So we could go with something fairly light. Hang on though. So the visual comes in and it gets put in a visual brush and cached, which is great. V3D. Front model. I'm just trying to understand how this thing is working. So it spins the perspective camera around. Auxiliary for derivation of this camera. Okay. Got it. But it's just spinning the viewport's camera. Okay, so if it just spins the viewport's camera, I think what we end up doing here is trading out this visual for a different one. So I think what we do, we'll see if this works. New rectangle. I believe rectangles support a background, if I'm not mistaken. Bill, gonna take in the visual brush. Height gets visual dot actual height. This is going to need to become a framework element in order to pick up that property. Framework element. We'll rename it later. Width gets visual actual width. So the idea is, when I say clone the element, we're not actually going to clone the element. We're just going to take a snapshot of it, slap it on a rectangle, and call it good enough. Okay, and it was already a visual element higher up, or a framework element higher up, so that should work. Okay. Same song, next verse. This time with feeling. I'd very much like to go through the backlog of all those flipper issues and just close them all. That would give me a great amount of joy. Okay, so flip. Okay, I mean, as long as we don't care to see the flip happen. Okay, so it's not quite right, obviously. But it is swapping between the content, which tells me that the storyboards are working. Okay, so when we go from unflipped to flipped, it's holding the visibility of the items until the flip occurs. I don't think this is quite... So I think this is where we now need to make the other changes. I think what I want to do here, because this is changing the visibility of the items at the halfway point. So the entire duration of this flip is 0.4 of a second. At 0.2 of a second, it toggles the back one visible and the front one off. And I think what we want to do is leave that there, but make you a 0. I want you to go invisible immediately. And then conversely the other way. Collapse this guy at 0, because in theory, the plane should have it. So let's come back over here. So the plane is not showing up the way I would expect, which is disappointing. Okay. I'm going to just move you up in the Z order, so you're always on top. Okay, and we've lost all our content. I'm wondering if I'm going to need to size it appropriately. I move you back up, I assume I get to see my content. Maybe not. Okay, so we're going to assume that the live XAML updating lost its mind as I move things around. I am thinking that I'm probably going to need to size this plane 3D. Before, it was sizing based upon the content within it, which was fine-ish. And now it doesn't have anything to size to. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab Snoop, everybody's favorite friend. Come here, Snoop. Boom. We're gonna do a little spelunking. So move you off to the side. Okay, ooh, that was arrow shake. I need to turn that off. Okay. So, a couple things to note. When you attach Snoop to your app, you'll note it actually shows up down at the bottom as a window inside my same process space. I realize you guys can't see my taskbar. Trust me. So even though it's a separate app, it actually starts its window inside the same memory space as your process, which is pretty cool. Which is how it's able to interact with everything. But it does mean that if you have something that, say, interacts on all of the windows in your application by going through like app.windows, Snoop can throw a monkey wrench into that plan on you, which is kind of exciting. So just be aware of that one. That's I had a friend tell me that he ran into that because he had some code that disabled all other windows while there was an operation in progress, and it disabled his Snoop window, which when I was done laughing, I thought was rather funny. Okay, so there's our flipper. And inside our flipper, we've got our border and our grid and our content presenter. So we've got content presenter 1, which is resizing, back content presenter, which is invisible at the moment, and then our plane 3D. So the plane actually has, so I'm going to do this. See if it'll let me do this and get away with it. It may not. Yeah, the red often means it's being locked in place by a storyboard. Darn storyboards. This guy is visible though. The plane doesn't have a background itself. I'm just trying to see something I can set on it that would give me... I want some sort of UI indication. It does have a height. It does have a width. And you can see when I select it here, Snoop does kind of make the red outline for me, which is pretty cool. When I do the back, you see the opposite is now true because it toggled those. I wonder if I pop... It's like it's not rendering the content. Interesting. Why would it not render the content? Interesting. Okay, so I'm thinking that the lack of a logical child is probably affecting the measure, which is probably causing it to not work the way I expect. Okay, so let's come down here. Let's change this up just slightly. So we're going to put you back to a visual, but you're named appropriately. But before I get too carried away, I'm going to just steal this guy. I'm going to come up here, and we're going to, I don't know, plop you in there for a moment. Come back to you in just a second. And then we're going to come back down here, and this is going to go back to a visual. But we're going to give it a visual it can keep. So up here, what we're going to do is similar to what this guy did. Let's see. Our child gets this. And I'd like to see if I could figure out how to get... This guy returns a visual child. I wonder if I could just make... Huh. Just trying to decide if I could get away with taking the visual child that it creates. And do that maneuver. Let's try that real quick. That might be a quick and dirty approach. So we're going to come back in here because you're going to break if I don't. Framework element. Come down here. Paste. Bring you down, and let's try that. Let's give that a shot and see what happens. Snoop, you go and wait. I appreciate your help. We'll need you more in a minute. Okay, so go back to our cards. No dice again. So I'm a little surprised that I'm getting nothing out of this. I would have expected something to get rendered at least. Let's see, jump into there. Yeah, so the fact that the plane 3D doesn't show anything, despite being high in the Z order, is a little shocking to me. I don't quite understand why it's not doing the full flip. Plane 3D. I'm wondering if there's something in this plane 3D that's relying on that other property. Oh, look at that. Betcha that's the problem, because everything in here is measuring and laying out based upon that. Let's give that a try. I wonder if that's the kicker. I wonder why this is nullable and this isn't. Okay, worry about that later. Okay, so now it's sitting on top, which is good-ish. Give me my Snoop and let's go with Spelunkin. Okay, so plane 3D, and then more importantly, if we hit the magnifying glass, do we see it here? No. It's definitely occupying the space. Still toggle it. But this guy here is definitely blocking our clicks now. He has something. I'm just surprised that. And this see, here's the thing, is this rectangle down here, it knows what it's supposed to show. Wait. Was that the viewport showing that? Wait. Something, how did that, wait. Did I just double click on this? I must have double clicked on it twice. Okay, so that guy knows about it. But this guy refuses to show him. So the plane, the viewport 3D visual, not giving me nothing. Why? Okay. Show me your stuff. You don't have sizing stuff on it. where... Okay, I wonder if this guy here showed its source. I wonder if this page is still active. Look at that, it is. Multi-shader effects. Ba-ba-bum. Oh, content not found. Ba-ba-bum. Resource not found. Boo! This is great, except for this doesn't give me Yeah, I'm less interested in understanding these and more interested in understanding how these translate to rendered elements. Takes a WPF element, puts it on a flat plane. Okay, so here's what we're going to start with. Set visual element. We are going to change this guy up a little bit because inside of this thing, and logical child is adding it in. Kind of curious if I need to do something more akin to this for the logical child, because this there's no reason this shouldn't work. Let's see. Boom. That. Do that. Do that. Fill. Visual brush. Oh, I wonder if so the visual brush actually updates. I'm wondering if it needs to be frozen. Oh, that could totally be we're gonna try this. So 2 changes all at once. Generally a bad idea, but we're gonna do it anyway. And then we're gonna freeze the brush. So that it doesn't change. And then this will become element. Okay, we're gonna try this because I have a feeling that I have a suspicion that this extra element is what is needed, or at least the freezable cannot be frozen, so that is clearly not the answer. Let's take that off, and we're going to run into the same problem here. Could do a render target bitmap as well, rather than a visual brush. That might be interesting as well. Well, let's start with this, because now we're down to just the one change. Now you've done something very weird. I think it's because now the sizing's off. Because now it actually has... I'm just very surprised that the plain 3D, when you add in the logical child, doesn't show up in Snoop. Oh, it's because I'm seeing the visual tree. Oh, got it. Interesting. Okay, so... measure based on the size of the child. Okay, visual child, add index. Child count. Right. Okay. How to go about this? How do I get this to behave the way I want? Let's go here next. Actually, so let's get it working first. Then we come back. It ends up being the issue of the brush automatically updating with the visual and that causing it to disappear. Mr. Adam, I am doing well this evening. How are you doing? Currently struggling to figure out how to get these 3D elements to play nice in WPF. I'm not as familiar with these APIs, so we're experimenting. That lines up with what was being done previously. Let's try that. Let's give that a try. I think I know part of my problem. I only brought one can of Mountain Dew with me. That was a mistake. Okay. Oh, let's see. These ones were both just blindly being called before, so we're gonna just blindly do those again. So that's probably not helping anything. Because I do think we can get this to work. So, let me look it up because I can never remember the API. WPF render target bitmap. Wait, what I wanted? Bitmap. As image, because you can snapshot a. Yeah, something akin to this. that thingy. Just kind of what we're trying to do with this rectangle. But I'm wondering if this is part of the issue. So we should take this guy in. Let's do this first. Boom. Okay, so render target bitmap. Do that. Do a brush. Aren't you disposable? Drawing context. One of you guys, one of these guys is disposable and it's a memory leak. Okay, so drawing context, draw, close, target, render. Okay, and so I think the kicker here now is we do target. Trying to remember, this guy derives from bitmap source, which is image source, and so I think what you do then is you just use an image with its source set to target. And I believe then the kicker becomes, let's turn that off. We do height equal to element render size height, width, EPH, and we use U as our element now. Then we don't have to do any swappy of it. At least not nearly as much. Because this came in here. This created a visual from the logical child. Oh, so this is logical child. That is one thing we're doing slightly differently. Create visual from logical child comes from this lovely little wrapper. We'll just make this thing work real quick the same way the other one did. Image, we're probably adding way too many elements now. There, add visual, add logical. There's logical, there's visual, add logical, invalidate measure. We change 96 DPI to user DPI. Good question. I don't think it's going to matter in this case. But you make an excellent point that probably needs to be a little more dynamic. And the reason I say it's not going to matter is because this image is going to end up getting scaled out with device independent pixels. And I don't care if it stretches a little, because it's going to be shown for 0.4 seconds. Actually 0.2 seconds, because halfway across it goes invisible. So I think it may or may not end up mattering. Must disconnect specified child from current parent visual. Oh, because I did the wrong thing. Visual child, not logical child. Let's try this again. Where did our PR end up? Boom. Hey, my unit. Ah! My test fit. Oh, I added a possible null ref. Oh, interesting. So these errors are coming out of code we didn't touch, but what is happening is when you rev up, blur is possible on good monitors. Yeah, I don't doubt that it's possible to be blurred. I just don't think it's going to be visible enough in such a short time frame to make a huge difference. But it is probably worth looking at doing. So these errors we'll go and fix up. Effectively, what's happened is when you add a newer .NET framework, you get a bunch more analyzers, and the newer .NET 6 analyzers are calling out that I've got some potential null references. So that's handy. We'll clean those up. Okay, now I'm a little confused because I would have expected this thing to work exactly as the other one did. Because at this point, I've almost made this thing match the original code. Let's see. We've dropped the equals, which should make a difference because that's more free, not less. I have 2 calls to remove visual child. And then wrap child with special decorator that caches layout invalidations. Technically, this comment should go here, which makes some sense. So the incoming value gets assigned here. It does get stored in this field. I don't know if this field has any usages outside of this property. It doesn't. They're all inside this property, so it doesn't matter because we can see all its usages here. This guy gets put in a layout invalidation cacher, which is what we did. The only thing we've somewhat subtly changed is we've wrapped the element up in something. I wonder if this is a case of the thing just not being visible. How can I make this visible? I know. Let's do this. We could just render it out. Could just render it out as an image and make sure that we get it. Let's start with that. Let's start with making sure that we're getting to the right thing. So this is going to be target. This is just going to be file IO, and then this will be a file path on my system that will work. So in this case, we will just use let's see, d:/dev temp. I don't know if that exists, but I'm going to go make sure it does. Actually, you know what? Skip dev. We'll just go d:/temp. That's a thing. Okay, so I have temp data. And let's just render this because we aren't seeing it, but I don't know if we aren't seeing it because we aren't getting a valid bitmap from the element, which can occur if the element's, say, invisible. That's the other thing. I suppose I could be checking, slap the debugger in there and verify that the size of the element is legit. Access to path d:/temp is denied. Oh, because because if you point it at a directory and tell it it's a file, well, that ain't gonna work. So try again. Okay, what do we get? Seemed like it got the right element. So it's getting a valid bitmap. It's rendering it at what I assume to be roughly the right size. On a flip back, I assume this image now updates and shows something about the right size. And if you look really close, you can see how these have gray edges. Whereas if we do, I can't flip it again, can I? Now I've lost it. I was gonna say, if you zoom in on font that has true type, you'll see the little blues and reds in there that make it appear crisp and sharp. I do wonder why I lose control of it there when it flips back. It has the right elements. Let me grab Snoop real quick because I want to see this thing. And I don't know if Snoop is going to even be able to get a hold of this guy. Okay, so we don't care about you. Okay, so that is fine, but I want to see the flip in the middle. Okay. The problem is I don't know if this viewport is actually expected to show me anything in Snoop or not. Doesn't look like it. Expected to show me anything? Oh, I just realized I'm clicking a button off screen that no one can see. This little guy down here is what enables this preview area in Snoop at the bottom to show up. So if you end up clicking, you can get a visual idea. And then this little slider can be quite handy. You know, I don't think it's expected to show anything here. Just notice the background image. That's clever. Okay, so why are you not showing up? Because you're visible. Go over here. Trying to decide if there's an easy way to do this where I unflip to flipped. Because I want it visible long enough to render it, but on the flip I kind of want to just get rid of it. Let's try that real quick. When we go to flipped, it's going to just kill the item. I have a theory. And the theory goes something along the lines of Kevin can't write WPF. It's a working theory. Okay, so we're going to go here. We're going to lock onto the guy first. Okay, so give me that. Okay, so these guys here, when I click, wait, what? Oh, I only changed it in the transition, not in the completed. Got it. I actually want to be here. Drag you back on. Nothing there, huh? I'm just really surprised I'm getting nothing out of this. And I'm wondering if it is the changes I've done in here to add visual child. Or not create visual child. Just take a quick gander down memory lane at what we did. Plain 3D. That's our new method. That's somewhat expected. This guy here, was previously taken in logical child. Oh, so we have changed something in there subtly. And this guy was previously using logical child. So if we take this, okay, so let's go in here and change a couple things to make it match a little better. So this becomes visual to match what it was before. And then let's see, the other change was we need to pass in logical child, which that is now the case. I wonder if that one was the entire problem. I was looking at the changes in here now. This is just formatting. This is going from using the field to the passed in value, which is fine. This is just formatting, using the parameter instead of the field. But overall, it remains consistent. This passes in the field as the parameter, and this passes in the field as the parameter. Okay, give that a shot. Because I am curious if something's off. And when in doubt, I may even just commit, go back to master and try again. Oh, that was it. That was it. Okay. Okay. Okay, so that gets something going. Let's see, visual state flipped. We need to do one of these guys. We got to go here. And we're going to target the plane. Oh, copy, not paste. And we're going to collapse the plane when that happens. And we're going to also go here and collapse it. So this, in both cases, when we get to the final state, we're going to collapse the plane. But what we're going to do here is at the beginning of this, we're going to make it visible. And we're going to do the same thing up here. And we're going to come down here. And we're going to set this up to key off at 0.4. So it's only visible during the flip, and then we just get rid of it. Okay. Okay. See if it works. see if it works. This would make me very, very happy. Oh, no, not flipper, card. Okay. Did not do what was expected. So the hiding of it. Let's see. I'm trying to customize the scroll bar, mainly the thumb, inside of a data grid. The XAML for the template is just too confusing for me. Don't feel bad. You've picked on what I believe to be the most complicated control in the entire WPF library. Are you using the default WPF templates, or are you doing the material design ones? Because I can point you in the right direction for the material design ones, but you are absolutely correct. Data grids are a beast. So real quick, in case you're not familiar with it, let's see. Snoop, this guy. So if you don't have Snoop and you're doing control theming work, I highly recommend it. You can download the latest release from the releases page using default. Okay, so I can show you the basic steps of what you will need. So very much recommend grabbing Snoop. The easiest thing to do is to first get an idea of what the default control looks like. There are some sites, control templates. This guy here, and these aren't perfect data grid style and templates. So these are, treat these templates here as a learning document, not as ground truth as far as what they are. But if you're looking to start templating something out, this will get you a pretty good idea of what things need to go where. So the hard part with the data grid is what you are actually after is a scroll viewer that is nested inside of here. So, and the reason I say grab Snoop, so slap a data grid up on your WPF app, open Snoop, the crosshairs next to the binoculars, you just drag it over your target window, and then you'll get something like this that opens up. The magical incantation, because you can start working your way down through the visual tree, which is a pain in the neck, or you can just put your cursor over the element you want and hold down Control and Shift together, and it'll automatically zip you down into here. It'll zip you into something way too deeply nested, but you can start working your way up. So for example, I can see data grid row is right there. I can work my way up, and what you're after is this scroll viewer here. So this guy here, this data grid scroll viewer, he is what's going to actually contain the stuff that you need to change the scroll bar for the thumb. Because I assume you're looking to do something with like one of the nice rounded corners or something similar. I don't know if this, can I get this down to here? So yeah, you can see in the material design library, we've customized it out with the built-in one. But once to get a hold of that guy, let's see, where is it? You're going to end up having to do a little bit of work to get down to him. So, and you'll note some of these things are, these names are important of these elements. So you'll note these ones here are used by the control template to line these up. But if you grab this default template for data grid, so starting here, and more specifically this control template, you should be able to drop this into your app. Double check it to make sure it doesn't change your data grid look too much. It's probably pretty close. These ones were based on what the WPF default ones were at one point in time. They are not necessarily kept up to date. But once you get into here, you'll have access to the scroll viewer. And then from here, this is where here's your scroll bars. So you've got your vertical scroll bar, your horizontal scroll bar, and these ones are the ones that you're looking to set a style or a template on. What you do then is you come over to the scroll bar styles and templates, and boom, there's those. From here, repeat button isn't what you're after. And then scroll bar thumb is what you're looking to set. So it is very complicated, but again, the data grid, in my opinion, is one of the most complicated controls in the entire WPF library, if not the most complicated. But the key elements are usually figure out what styles and templates you're wanting to edit, and then kind of work your way up from there. I will say, if you want to see a practical example, the material design library, which is what we're working on here, does have examples of templating out the data grid. I will warn you, they are big, and it's only big because of how much stuff is in the data grid. But here is ours. And there are a lot of things here, which is why I really like starting with Snoop, finding the element that I want to change, and then working backwards to figure out how to change that element. It would be really great if there was a simplistic way of getting in and just modifying one element of the template. So for example, in Snoop, I can go in here and grab the, let's see, where is the horizontal scroll bar? Border, vertical scroll bar. Where's my horizontal scroll bar? Border. Are you in here? Where is this guy? Am I way outside? Have I lost myself? Horizontal scroll bar. That's the guy I'm looking at. So for example, if I wanted to get in here and change the either the track or the thumb or some other here. Yeah, like, let's pick on this one real quick. If we do, where's a brush? I just want to change a color. Where's a brush? Show me a brush. Brush. It's an attached property. Minimum, maximum. Yeah, sure. There. Oh, text element, foreground. Thumb. Here, we'll just go in and modify the thumb because I know I can get at you. Background. There. Not transparent. Red. Bright red. Or how about something that doesn't line up with Snoop? Blue. Boom. So, for example, ours, so I'm setting the background property on this border, but this border has an opacity set on it, but it does give me a blue color. If you are interested, so this is not usually the way I recommend doing things, but let's see, examples. In this repo here, I have a little utility I wrote. This guy, and I'll link directly into him as well. This guy here is something I wrote specifically because in a lot of cases, I want to just go inside of the template, modify one little property, and I don't want to retemplate the universe just to modify that one little property. So this is effectively, if you're familiar with reflection in C#, this is like XAML level reflection. It's not a great thing. It's kind of brittle because if anything changes about the template, this can just fail completely silently and give you no indication as to why. So not great in that regard for maintainability, but it can be rather handy if it's like, I just want to touch that one property. So just like how in Snoop, I can dive in and tweak individual properties, you could leverage something like this to say, you know what? I really only want to change a handful of properties. I know the name of the templated part that I'm looking for. Let's just dive in and grab it. So I built this specifically because there was a handful of cases where there was things people were wanting to edit in XAML and on templates, and it's like, it's not really reasonable to expose something all the way up for one kind of niche use case. So I built this. Is it useful? Works for my examples. Is it a great way to build it? But it's certainly a lot easier than retemplating everything, because to do that scroll bar in the data grid, you're going to have to template at least the data grid, the scroll viewer, and then the scroll bar in order to get at the thumb. I think you're writing at minimum 3 control templates. Minimum. Possibly more. So, if that helps. I don't know if I've actually done a good tutorial on retemplating controls. I'm going to add that to my list because I don't recall a good video that I've done on retemplating. Where's my stream ideas Word document? Sorry, I've got a Word document I keep for just such a purpose. Where's my... Whoop, come here. I don't know why you aren't showing up in my recent history list. Okay. So hopefully something like that is handy. If you can make use of it, by all means, have at it. Okay. I lost my train of thought. Okay, so we got some flipper action problems that are biting me. And I think the issue is the point at which we are setting these things. So, theory. We are going to not do this here. I am going to just straight up in the XAML set its content. Oh, I can't call this from the XAML, can I? How do I get at it in a reasonable manner? Planning to do a stream on CS Proj setup, syntax, or just suggest some good stuff to learn. That is a good one. That's actually not on my list of streaming ideas, but it's on my list to do. So there's a local user group, the Spokane.net user group that the company I work for sponsors. We sponsor several of the local users groups. And it's on my list of topics to speak at for that. Because that is one of those areas that when Microsoft introduced what they call the project SDK format, people used to be under the old impression of, oh, you don't edit your CS proj. That's scary. And then Microsoft made it friendly, and people are still in the, oh, that's scary part. So I don't know if there's good... So I think it's worth learning, but I don't know if I've ever found like an all-in-one good documentation for it. What I've learned, I've pieced together from various places, and by looking at it, if you want to search for it, the syntax is going to be under MS Build. Hey, thank you for the subscription. I appreciate it. So if you search for... Go here. Blah, 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 blah. MS Build CS Proj. So yeah, you'll find some of the docs are going to be around here. Yeah, and I'll drop this link here. This will get you an idea of how to use it, but honestly, these docs are. Oh, thanks for taking your time to play. No problem. I really should just put it somewhere on my stream description. I may have something I'm working on, but I have no problem rabbit trailing on people's questions. I do it a lot. But there is a lot of interesting bits about it. The other part that gets a little challenging is oftentimes Microsoft builds frameworks that leverage this significantly. But they leverage it in a way that's hidden behind the scenes from you. So by simply setting this SDK equals Windows Desktop, there's a whole lot of stuff that gets you. And it's not always apparent that there's a small but important difference between that and that. There's a lot. And so you can kind of start to piece together some of it from the docs. There is what is it called? The visualizer. What is the thing called? There is a log viewer. This guy. This is the guy. This. This is effectively your debugger for it, which is pretty cool. So the MS Build structured log viewer, that's the magical thing that you're looking for. You can do the download desktop app, or there's an online version of it. But the I think it shows in the docs here, or is it back on the previous page? So this is the key thing. If you're using .NET Build on the command line, there's a -BL tag you can use to create a bin log file. There is on this guy here, if you use MS Build directly, you can do a /BL as well, but you can start to get an idea of how the compilation is working, what properties go into it, where things come from, what things are available to be overridden where, and you can kind of start to make things work. If you get to this level of debugging of like the Microsoft SDK stuff, you're off in the weeds a little bit. But it can be really handy for debugging your own bits to figure out how things work. Because at the end of the day, MS Build is really just kind of a structured pipeline that has a really clever dependency tree that it can work through to do like your tiered compilation, so that it doesn't need to do everything every time. Planning to make a presentation on CS project at the conference. Can it be posted to YouTube? So not currently on the schedule. It is on my list of things that I would like to do, and if it does get done, it will get posted to my YouTube as well. So the last one, because I believe I included my last one. If I go here, where is my? Those are my playlist. Where is it? Just here? I think I put it under this one. Yeah, so you'll note the C# programming one. Like this one here, the calamities talk that I did, ends up showing up here. If you are wanting to follow the user group videos, so Intelitech is the company I work for. You can grab them there. And you'll note they are usually labeled with something like user group on the end of it. Adventures in AI was a Python user group that happened very recently. Tuesday? Yeah, 2 days ago. Duh. So we are actively working on getting our video recording and streaming not to suck. That's the nicest way I can put it. Before it was kind of a bit of a mess. But you are, here, while I'm advertising for it, Locan.net user group. Boom. So if you are interested, these things always happen. We try to put them all online as well. They usually only have a month or two out. The next one is going to be my boss talking on what's coming up in C# 10. Nope, that's not it. This feels like a date that's off because I'm fairly confident that the next talk upcoming was on the new stuff coming in C#. Apparently it's not posted yet, but it will be there when it is. Fairly confident that's what they said, that Mark was doing that next month. We do them, what is it, the second Tuesday or third Tuesday of every month is the C# ones. And I can't remember the schedule for the Python. There is one coming up for there's one coming up for Terraform for infrastructure as code. Where is it? Yeah, this is the next one that's coming up. It's a pity there are no speeches on WPF. I agree. So I love it, and it's kind of why I started streaming. Is there was a lack of content. Some people, I think the lack of content gives people the idea that it's dead, but there's quite a few people out there that are still doing it. So for what it's worth. Okay. Stack pop, stack pop, stack pop. Flipper. That's where. Before I went off the rails on that, Flipper. I was wanting to set the Flipper content to a fixed bit. So I think what we will do is we will just do in the apply template, plain 3D, and we're going to call our set visual content. We're going to do new border, and we're going to just hard code some stuff in here because hard coding's fun. 300 width. So I have a theory that because I want to get my animation working. And you hush. And let's see, background gets new solid color brush. Colors. Nope, it's not how you fill colors. Stop helping me. Stop helping me. So Studio, do what I tell you. Thank you. Oh, hang on. Fuchsia. I typically use fuchsia as my visual to-do color because it is usually ugly enough that there's no possible way I'm going to leave it in. That's actually one of the things that Microsoft sort of did well and poorly. The default icon that you get when you do a WPF application, Microsoft made it just good enough that a lot of people are like, yeah, we'll keep that. Same with WinForms that had kind of the little colorful boxes. So you see those icons show up in a lot of places where nobody bothered to change them. So for UWP, they literally was box X. It was like very explicitly trying to say, guys, this is a temp thing. Please, please, please replace it. The parameter. Oh, because it hasn't been rendered. That's cute. Fine. We'll render the thing. Var order gets. Let's see. Border. Let's see. I think I can just do a straight up measure. New render size. I believe that will force a layout. We'll just double check that. But I'm pretty sure that will. The other thing is I could switch that render target bitmap to use the width and height properties temporarily. Not a big deal. Okay. Cards. Okay, did you get a rendered size? Let's see. R, render size. No, see, you're still, okay. I'm not going to fight with you. I'm just going to go change this. So let's see, how many things are using rendered size? More than one. In width gets element width. Or actually, this should probably be double. No, we're going to go with in because we're going down to pixels anyway. We're just going to use that multi-cursor trick. Jump that guy in. And then all of you become a lot simpler. Width, height. We come down here and go width, height. Okay, so there. I think at this point I'm going to comment that out because I don't think we need it. It's probably just slowing stuff down. Okay. Okay, so you don't matter anymore. Okay. I should see a red rectangle. Or nothing. Right after I commented those things out, I realized I kind of want it. Well, that was dumb of me. Let's put it back. I do believe I can get this lined up correctly where we can do that frame dropping. So front content, flipper, back content, and just toggle the appropriate visibility of each as the flip is occurring, but not have the content inside of the rotation itself. Okay. I go back to my folder. What did I get? Empty. Excellent. I was worried it was going to be easy. Let's see. Invalidate. Border. Measure. Size. I'm trying to remember exactly what the right incantation is to force this thing to lay out properly. Some combination of that should do it. Because ultimately I really don't care. I'm just trying to display a rectangle. Okay, so let's go here. And really? That didn't work. Move the image. Way too much thinking for opening an image. Okay. What am I missing? Presentation source. Measure then arrange. Is that what I'm missing? Measure, arrange, update layout. Then call it. Okay. Measure. So use size. Range. So I guess the invalidate is kind of pointless. So if I'm going to do this all directly, new direct 0, 0, 300, 300. Something like that. Measure, arrange, then update layout. Okay. Hey, yeah, in the right window. We should be going elsewhere. What should be? Okay, so let's just check. Do you have a rendered size at least? Desired size. That's set. Render size. Render size is now set. Okay, so I'm guessing I get. Guessing I get a reasonable image now. Hey, look, big fuchsia box. That's what we're looking for. I'm confused as to why that fuchsia box is not showing up. Okay, so it's gotta be part of my storyboards. Let's just start killing some of these collapsed ones. Go like that. Really? That didn't do it, huh? See, question about tables. Is it better to use data grid instead of list view in all cases? List view seems kind of half-finished and buggy. So, when you say list view, I'm assuming you're using a list view with a grid, with a grid view inside of it, because that's where you get a kind of a halfway data grid setup. And it kind of depends on what you're after. In general, if you're doing a table, I have every time I've used a grid view inside of a list view, I've always moved away from it at the end. There's rarely situations where I end up keeping it. So the data grid is by far more complicated because you have to make sure that you handle everything appropriately. Especially if you don't want like all the sorting and resizing and all of that stuff. Like if you want to give the user lots of control, data grid is great. The problem is you give the user lots of control. And then you have to go and selectively make sure you turn off the stuff you don't want people doing. The list view with a grid view inside of it is a little half-baked. It's not great. Because it gives you, the only thing it really adds to the mix is kind of giving you like a header, but it's a header that you can't even like sort on. So it's like, well, I don't see a lot of advantages for it. The other thing that I've used a lot is I will template out a list, a regular list view or a list box with a regular grid with a shared size scope on the columns. That way I can get all of my stuff to line up evenly. Because if all you want is a nice virtualized scroller, Listbox gives you that. So if you just want a nice virtualized scroll and you can template out your own items, works pretty good. The only thing that gets a little weird is if you have a large collection of items, like let's say more than 1,000. The thing that gets awkward is you can't you can't have automatic column sizing and UI virtualization at the same time. Because what you'll end up happening, so imagine you've got a column that's like username, and usernames are all various lengths. The problem is if you let the column auto size to the usernames, it will only auto size based upon the visible items, because the virtualization is going to not create UI elements for all the things that aren't on screen yet. It'll wait, which is great for performance. Horrible for sizing because it doesn't know the size of all those invisible things. So as you scroll, you can see things kind of do the shutter action, which gets awkward. Or you have a fixed size, which is closer to data grid behavior, and let the user resize them, but then they have to end up resizing. So it gets UI virtualization and column size gets weird. Data grid gives you the flexibility of letting people change and reorder and that kind of thing. But if you want to, but then you end up turning all of that off. So long story short, if I had a lot of data and I wanted to give my users lots of freedom, I would use a data grid. If I didn't care to give my users lots of freedom, and I didn't care about virtualization, I'd use a regular items control and just template it myself. If I wanted UI virtualization, I'd probably go to a list box and template it myself, with the potential of needing to turn off selection, because that the two big things that a list box gives you over a regular items control are UI virtualization and selection, which is great unless you don't want those things. And typically, if you don't want those things, you just go to an items control, which is great. Oh, I keep doing that card. Okay, well that's clearly a thing now. That's better. Move you up. Okay, so that puts you where I want you. Huh? Where'd it go? Just dropped. Okay, what did I do? Front, back are still set with their appropriate visibilities are still set. Front and back. Only thing I changed is the order of operation. Okay, the live XAML update. It's really great when it works and can be really confusing when it doesn't. Because you should... So the back should sit on top of the front. So let's go here. I think... I almost want to invert the order of these items. Because front should be in front of back, my opinion. At least higher in the Z order. The nice part with WPF, like WinForms, people are usually much more familiar with Z ordering. For people who may not know that term, it just refers to, if you imagine all of your UI elements as like pieces of paper and you layer them on top of each other, that's the Z order. Effectively, if you imagine like a XYZ or Z axis, where Z is the one going up and down, it's the height of items relative to each other. Because when you stack papers, like UI elements, you can't ever have two really at the same level-ish. Kind of can. But there's always this hierarchy of who sits on top of who, right? You can take those papers and you cut them into different shapes and layer them in different areas, but at the end of the day, you've got a stack of papers. Which is actually not a horrible analogy to how layout works. Okay, so so the front is now in the front, and I've got a big, ugly fuchsia thing. That looked like it worked. Problem is maybe I actually want this thing all the way in the back. let's do it one more time. I think I may just want it all the way in the back. The problem is I almost need to bring it forward. I think I want it in the back right up until it goes to flip. Maybe I need to actually move it around in its Z order. Because I could bring it to the front, do the flip, send it to the back. I'd really rather just leave it in the front and toggle its visibility. But something about that isn't working. Let's see. There. 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 So it does... Okay, so it is flipping nicely. Okay, so in the back, it flips nicely, and this is kind of the behavior we want. Okay, that is the behavior I would like. Obviously, I want it to resize to the content appropriately. But it is swapping the content right at that halfway point, which is what we're going for. Okay, I think that's progress. I want to play with this and get that working, but I'm also conscious of the fact that it is 1:45 to midnight, and I'm going to fade fast. So, before I get too carried away, step 1. More work on the flipper to try a new layout approach. Okay, so we're going to put that there. You know what? Before we call it, we're going to click this button. Okay, so that's there, that's out. Real quick, I'd also like to fix that localization issue. Let's just jump back in here real quick and clean those up, because I'd like to get a new build of that going. Close all. So I'm gonna rebuild and may need to close and reopen. I think the rebuild will do it. So the one thing that this project does that's kind of a little different. Yeah, I'm gonna have to rebuild you in a minute once you figure your dependencies out. Is it doesn't block warnings on build. So there's some fancy settings you can turn on that say, hey, treat warnings as errors, which is good because most warnings are legitimate errors that you don't want to let in. But that setting can be really obnoxious while you're just working on things. So the compromise I have made is I don't have warnings as errors turned on by default. However, what I do change is I turn that flag on the pipeline. So at the point you submit a PR, it is going to check it. So if there are any warnings, it will flag them. And this is likely what is, let's see. That guy goes there, that guy goes there. Yep. Let's see, first or default, this is actually nullable snack bar, which is correct. So it is appropriately flagging stuff. Unboxing a potentially null value. This is an easy fix. Apparently ReSharper already flagged it. Oh, you know what? I think in this case what we want to do is tell it to ignore, because this is a unit test. I actually would like it to, if it gets a null there, I would prefer it to blow up in spectacular ways. These are the ones that I think because the unfortunate part is newer versions of .NET have more nullability checking in them, which is great. Let's see if we do that. That will allow this to be null. That will require question mark there, which means swatches could be null. And we don't want to allow swatches to be null, so we will default this to array.empty in that case. What is this? Swatch. So all this because I turned on .NET 6. What is your problem? Array.empty is not available in net 452. Really? What is the availability of it? Net core 3.1. So found if net core app 3.1 or greater. Else, this is actually the primary use case for why these things exist. New swatch sub-0. Let's see here. This is going to be actually question mark there. What is your problem here? Cannot be applied to this guy. Only wants an IEnumerable though. There. I assume if I toggle U up to net 6, I see a similar error. Yeah. That handles that one. Okay, next. Let's see, controls. Do that. Let's see, possible null reference for input. Match on empty string, that's not a big deal. It's really unlikely that we get a null one there. Nullability of culture doesn't match base type. I assume value is probably... This is gonna flag a bunch of them, aren't you? Let's see, nullability parameter context doesn't match base. The parameter context doesn't match base. Let's see, so we'll just clean out a bunch of these all at once. Dereference of possibly null reference value. I think we just say blow up. Let's see, first or default, so you are definitely nullable. Find snack bar. Snack bar is default. There we go. There. Just like that, cleaned up a bunch of nullability warnings. I will say, if you are able to, definitely turn on nullable reference types in C#. It's on by default for new projects that are .NET 6, or I should say the new project template for projects has it turned on by default, and I highly recommend it. It can be a little obnoxious, but the number of bugs it has saved me from is very high. Let's see, fixing or reference type warnings. Commit, push. Okay, we'll let that guy roll. Okay, with that, I think I'm probably going to sign off, get some rest, prep for the weekend. If I get a chance to work on this flipper before next stream, I may try to to jump on and do an extra stream, but I keep thinking I'm gonna have time to do that, and I keep realizing I have no free time in my life. So Thursday nights are my programming night, and I very much enjoy it. So also thank you to everyone who's been contributing either to the material design projects or just hanging out on stream for the suggestions. Justin Bieber, love all the feedback. I really do appreciate it. It is very welcome. So that, I'll say happy coding. See everyone next time.